So by and by, I think there's no better place on the face of the earth.
Comes a time when you're drifting. Comes a time when.
And right here, our journey begins with the first signs of fall. That is my friend Dan. He's an adventurer and just an all-around funny guy. And that is me. It's one of those plants you don't want to touch. Well, I'm touching it right now. He is the Driftless Zone. I don't know what to say here. I think I got the wrong mushroom. We're not perfect, but we are here to explore. But let me step back for just a second. Have you ever thought to yourself that the world is all but explored already, and that we live in an ever-shrinking global world? But what if I was to tell you that there is a place in this country that's huge, that 99.5% of Americans have no idea that it even exists? And what if I was to tell you that most of the people that actually live there don't know that they're living in a really special spot?
I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about.
Yet it's geologically and biologically amazing. And from a historical perspective, Native Americans used this place as the sacred meeting ground for ages. And while they've left their mark, it's all but almost been forgotten. And that's until now. The journey begins.
I'm Dan Bertalin, and I'm a geologist. And I'm here to unravel some of the scientific mysteries. And there's some mysteries that will almost raise the hair on the back of your necks about what happened to some of the cultures in here.
So where is this place? Well, it exists right here, in between 4 states, Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. And it's called the Driftless Zone. Do you know what the Driftless Zone is?
I don't know. I'm not sure what that is. That sounds like a desert or something.
Are we on a driftless zone right now?
Yes.
Even though he explained it to me, I didn't get the drift.
Oh, that's good.
In this one small region of our country lies an area that wasn't hit by the crushing effects of the glaciers. It created a kind of topographical island. This area contains a multitude of questions, mysteries you might say, and most people have little idea that they exist. We're here to help shed light on these mysteries, the mysteries of the Driftless. Alright, so it's day 1 of our expedition.
This is where you want hiking boots and not slippery slippers.
Dan actually is the geologist. I'm a biologist by training.
Some of my early studies were in glacial geomorphology.
What I'm interested in is all the unique plants and animals. This watercress is telling us about the water chemistry.
The most important thing is we made it back down and we're safe.
Now let me lay this out for you. We're here to explore the mysteries. But to really get a sense of an area, as everybody knows, you have to get the big picture.
It's gorgeous, it's beautiful, and the people are absolutely wonderful. So by and by, I think there's no better place on the face of the earth than the Driftless area. It's just gorgeous. I love it.
Should I hop in?
See these 2 posts right here?
Yep.
Do not touch those with your feet. Don't get anywhere near the propeller. These controls you don't want to touch. Just don't touch those.
Is there anything else that I can do to mess things up that I shouldn't do?
Well, frequently a photographer or someone gets his elbow on these throttles. We don't want to stop flying all of a sudden.
Good idea. So this amazing yellow plane with its twin engines is extremely powerful for its size. and we can lift out of tight valleys and fly low to the ground. And from this vantage point, the topography is apparent. It's far from flat. In fact, in this area, the farmers have made that visually apparent. Because of the hills, they farm with the contours. This saves the soil and forms artistic, almost flowing bands of agriculture. The valleys are deep, and each one has a stream that flows to the great Mississippi River. But what's amazing about this land isn't just that there are nice hills and deep valleys. It's that this area exists as an island in an otherwise flattened landscape. You go east, west, south, and north, and you don't have topography like this. So sure, the glaciers missed it. But why? How? And does it even matter? To find out, we have to start unlocking some of the mysteries. The first one that was visually apparent in the plain are these small spots in the landscape. The sinkholes.
Well, might be able to get right up to. Here's a line of 3 right here that cross the highway. This one's real close. We're looking at a topographic map. It's relatively flat or rolling here, yet it's got all these little weird dots, and the dots line up. And those are what we're seeing out there. The dots are those little tiny sinks where the ground has made these depressions. Okay, so like the question is why?
Let's go to this site here.
All right, so we're in Fountain, Minnesota, sinkhole capital of the world, and we're kind of on a tour. We're trying to find all the different sinkholes. Dan and George are our tour guides right now.
It goes down really deep. You can't even see the bottom.
They're not just one little snapshot at a time. These are dynamic things geologically, and in geologic time, things that happen very quickly. I mean, you can imagine once water starts coming down here, it starts an erosional process, and once that begins, it accelerates, and you'll see this area both go down and grow in diameter. And these things can happen almost overnight and even drain lakes.
Things are dissolving underneath slowly, and the surface just kind of sags but doesn't collapse. Well, as that cavern underneath widens more and more, and all of a sudden there's no support for the ground above, it can collapse in seconds.
Why only in the driftless?
The word driftless is the key. This is not covered with glacial drift. It's not covered with clay, sand, and gravel. It doesn't have a somewhat permeable protective layer over it. All this is exposed right at the surface, and it has been for millions of years, and that's what allows it to take place. If this thing had been scoured by glaciers, covered with gravel, all these sinkholes filled in with sand and gravel and clay, they would have filled up and they wouldn't occur anymore. But they're preserved because it's driftless.
Dan's words seem to echo in my head.
They're preserved because it's driftless.
These sinkholes are here because it's driftless, but their formation is only a sign to a greater underground world of caverns.
Caves.
That led us to this small farm-style building. We wanted to find out what happens to the water below the sinkholes.
I'm gonna find out right here, come on.
Gonna go down into the cave. So a small door in the middle of the building opened up into what is really a monster cave. And the whole thing is run by this father-son team, Mark and Ryan. And Ryan has lived here almost his entire life.
What, like 7 years old or something?
Yeah, first grade. The house is built over top of a sinkhole, and the sinkhole goes down almost 100 feet to the main level of the cave. Just figured everyone's got something like this down below their house, but yeah, now I realize it's kind of a rare thing, I mean, sure, there's lots of caves in this area, but no two caves are alike.
There are caves scattered throughout pretty much the whole driftless area, yeah.
The cave, it's basically an underground canyon. Well, the cave was formed, by the underground river that was flowing through here thousands of years ago. The sinkhole is probably just a collapse feature for the cave itself. Limestone is very soft rock, and it is very easy for it to dissolve if the water is acidic. And over time, it did form into a small underground stream that eventually grew into an underground river that carved out the passageways the same way a river above ground would carve out a canyon. This is what I have under my house, and most people end up calling me the caveman or something like that.
As we walk through these passageways, it feels like we're walking on a stream bed.
When we have heavy rains or flooding, this passageway will have water coming down through it on a fairly regular basis.
But here's the question. If all the water flows into the cave, where does it end up? Does it ever reach the light of day again? We visited a few other caves in the region, and in some form or another, they all had water in them. And as we walked through them, you could almost imagine yourself as a droplet of water in a raging river flowing underneath the ground. But apparently, this isn't the end of the water's journey.
Spring.
It's literally just water kind of gushing out of the earth. We have these really cool bluffs right here. You know, just right at the base where it meets the stream, you just have water coming right out of the ground.
But because of where we've been, this mystery almost seems to answer itself.
Wonder what happens when all the water runs in those sinkholes? They've used tracer dyes in some of those sinks to find out that they bubble out in springs miles and miles away.
So a drop of water that, say, starts in the sinkholes would flow through the caves and fissures in the Driftless and would likely pop out like this amazing spring, which as a result helps to give the Driftless its world-class trout streams. But this doesn't explain everything. Certain bluffs near here are unique formations called algific talus slopes.
Algific talus slopes.
These rare slopes are known to breathe cold air and contain Ice Age relics.
A bit of a hike up here. So.
Here we have a talus slope that's made predominantly of limestone, but this is all compacted, it's ancient.
If we could uncover this talus, what you would see is lots of fractures within the limestone that's here. And in some of those fractures, they'll form cave systems. There actually will be ice formations in that cave system, and that cold air flow creates this algific condition.
You put your hand up in there and wow, is that ever cold? That's got to be 35, 40 degrees. The bluff is actually breathing here. Air is being taken in above and it's going through the cold bluff where there's ice from last winter, and it's coming out and nourishing this Ice Age relic plant community here.
In fact, there are a few rare plants and animals that have made these slopes one of their last strongholds. To help find them, we've recruited the help of Abby Church.
Oh, crazy. Millipede.
And Jim Thielen.
There's one. I have a live one too.
So along these vents, we found the beautiful but deadly northern monkshood, an endangered Ice Age survivor that needs these cool conditions to survive. We also found a handful of snails, which remarkably call this one of their last strongholds.
Here is a Pleistocene relic species. This is a cherry stone drop snail.
Broad-banded forest snail. There's this broadband that was just added to the endangered species list in Wisconsin as a species of special concern.
So we know that this snail takes at least 2 years to mature. So there's a subadult that's alive. And these are wonderful animals, and they're fascinating.
In total, we found 6 snail species, and this being one of the only places in the world to find them.
This is an island within an island of the Driftless area. We know very little about the biology or life history of these species. And that's one of the things I hope to do in the future, is study their life history and follow them through a sequence of years. They are here because of unique geology.
What happens is when you get in really close and you learn about the individual species, you learn about the plants, you learn about the animals, that's when it becomes really amazing.
The Driftless Zone is a hot spot of biodiversity. It's the confluence of western species and eastern species that come together right at the Mississippi River. And also with the Driftless area, you've got this combination of native species and species that are left over from the Pleistocene era.
In this mixing of species, the Driftless holds some rare gems. Problem for the species, though, is that most people who live here don't know how biologically diverse their own backyards really are.
I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about.
There is hardly a property in the Driftless area that does not have a rare species on it. And most people don't know that. And all it takes is a hike through your property, get familiar with the species that are there, and know that once a property turns to pavement, if it's developed or mined, you can't get that back. You can't restore it to what it was. It's much better to protect what you have.
It's just one more layer of the trickle-down effect of everything that's created by the fact that this is the Driftless.
So as we looked for species arbored by these unique Driftless habitats, we were told of a small population of rattlesnakes found on the habitats known as goat prairies.
The goat prairies.
So yep, that's where we're heading.
You have to almost be half goat to be able to climb up the hill.
Mountain goats.
We are on a dry prairie, also known as a goat prairie for its steep topography.
Things getting a little steep there. I feel like I'm dealing with terrain from an old Roadrunner Wile E. Coyote cartoon at times. I mean, it is sheer rock face.
It's pretty steep though, so we gotta be pretty careful walking around up here.
Tell us what you think about rattlesnakes.
I'm not the biggest fan. I'm a little bit scared of them.
I got my boot struck once, but a lot of times they'll just try to scare you, so they'll like hit you, and they won't even have their teeth out or anything. They just want to spook you a little bit.
Right. While always a rare snake, timber rattlesnakes are mostly found further south. Their range is extended into the Driftless because the glaciers didn't destroy these rocky bluffs that they need to den.
How can you tell it's a big one?
The width of the belly right there means it's about that big around of a snake. So this guy is lurking somewhere in here, and I hope I don't step on him.
Oh, there is a snake in here, actually.
Got one?
It's way back. It's a neonate. Actually, way back there.
Whoa! I think there's another one right up there. I put my head down right next to another one. There's another one right behind me.
Is that one right there by your knee?
Yeah. We're probably kneeling on the top of a whole bunch of them mixed into this thing, so. Unfortunately, the population we found is only one of 2 that Armin knows about in the entire area. Mostly a problem of snake hunters and people that don't like snakes.
People are inclined to want to kill snakes sometimes. A lot of the snakes around here are really rare.
So clearly, the plants and animals that call the Driftless their home do so because of the unique geology. But as we sit up on top of these goat prairies, you can't help but think about our own human history. Where have we been and where are we going? Well, to find out, we're going to a cave where human history has been recorded.
Cave art.
Rock art is a part of the Native American past, and it's an aspect of it that is very difficult to read. It's not like a written language, but there's symbols, many of which are abstract, but then there are other things that are clearly readable. There are buffalo, and there are birds, and there are deer, and then there's humans that are hunting the deer sometimes. So there are stories that are recorded on the rock art. It's a part of the puzzle, it's a part of the picture of the past.
When exploring cave art, which can be somewhat difficult to interpret at times.
It's a bit like looking at clouds in the sky, and I mean in some ways, but
you might as well learn from the man that wrote the book on the topic, Ernie Bozart. To start, he shared with us the process he goes through to look for new cave art.
We get in and we just start looking at the walls and we just examine them. And you could come in here tomorrow and the light will be different and you'll see different things.
He explained that when you interpret cave art, you have to get into their world.
We are in a different world. We are in the underworld. On the white, this is a stylized bird. Here's the tail and the wings. There's no head. And then coming out of this wing is a human arm with 4 fingers coming out. There's another bird right here, another red bird. This is a thunderbird. There's the tail, so it's a white-tailed deer because the tail is up. And then the ribs are shown in the body. This is as close as we get to written record. Most people, they have no clue that this is even here. The frustrating thing about this cave is I think we're seeing about 10% of the rock art that's here. And so we're missing a lot of the story. So the more you know, the more questions come up.
But the rock art gives us only one small piece at trying to unlock our human past. One of the most unusual and amazing mysteries of this area are the ancient effigy mounds.
Effigy mounds.
One of these effigy mounds can be found at Pikes Peak State Park in northern Iowa. But these formations are big, and the hardest thing for us was to visually show how impressive these sites really are. This is scarier than the kayaking. I need someone to hold the ladder always. From the vantage point in the tree, I had the crew position themselves at key points along the mound. And lo and behold, a figure started to take shape. It was a bear.
This is a burial mound. Okay. Absolutely. This would contain the remains of humans. Well, the greatest mystery is what happened to these people. They disappeared. And this happened about AD 1000 to AD 1050, and the effigy mounds ceased to be built. They'd been built for 400 years, and they just simply stopped.
Fortunately for us, this small patch of forest had been cleared and the mound was visually apparent with the short grass. How would you ever know how many of these existed in the Driftless? Could there be burial mounds on people's property that still remain undiscovered? Well, the simple answer is yes. They're discovering them all the time. And to find out how scientists might discover more effigy mounds, we went to the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse to find their LiDAR expert.
Hello. You must be Ryan.
Yes, how you doing?
I'm Dan.
Dan, nice to meet you.
This is the Ray.
Ryan began pulling up a few data sets of the surrounding area, just to give us a feel of how much detail you can achieve with a high-tech LiDAR system.
It's called active remote sensing. So instead of just passively receiving signals where the sunlight bounces off objects, it's actually sending out a pulse of energy. In this case, it's light.
Now, these LiDAR systems can be attached to planes that fly over selected terrains. The lasers bounce off objects on the ground, and with millions of data points and high-tech algorithms, they can essentially pull out the vegetation of an area so that you can see just the ground.
By removing the vegetation, you are getting at the ground here, and you can see these circular mounds.
Yeah, that one up there looks like, probably a cougar.
One of the best examples of visualizing with LiDAR is right here. A whole line of marching bears, a falcon, and a long snake. This technology is extremely useful because it means we can find things that had been forgotten. In fact, we're just now starting to analyze parts of the Driftless to find more of these ancient effigy mounds. And one of my real hopes is that the actual diversity of the entire Driftless area is not forgotten. You see, what people outside of the Driftless don't realize is how many habitats you can actually find right here. You see, here you can find cool algific slopes near hot goat prairies, near even hotter areas growing cacti. And of course, everything seems connected as well. The sinkholes lead to caves, which lead to springs, and they're all flowing under effigy mounds. And of course, all of this made us think about what we've learned so far. And we realized that all of it is tied to the biggest question of all. What happened here to make the glaciers miss this place? And to answer this question, we're meeting with expert geologist Dr. Jim Knox. And he chose to meet with us at a sand quarry, which is basically a kind of unique place for us to see back in time.
And drift is an interesting term. It's a general term that applies to glacial-related deposits. Now, the driftless area was never completely encircled at one time, but at different times, ice abutted one side or the other. Some people hypothesized that the driftless area was a land that was higher than the surrounding regions, and that was why it wasn't glaciated, but that's wrong. Actually, there are a lot of areas that are higher than the driftless area. There are probably three principal reasons why southwestern Wisconsin and northwestern Illinois escaped glaciation and are the true driftless area. One, you have a very deep downwarping of the bedrock at Lake Superior. We call it a syncline. And that deep synclinal downwarping was just like a siphon for the glacial ice that was coming off the Laurentide ice mass in Canada. And so it tended to channel ice southwestward into Minnesota, and then it came down, to the west of us. Similarly, over on the other side of the state of Wisconsin, we have relatively weak rocks, a lot of shale in places. This was an old pre-glacial lowland, easily scoured by the glaciers and cut deeper, but that also served like a funnel or a sluice way to kind of channel an ice lobe. So you got two siphons basically pulling the ice away from the driftless area. And then the third factor that's often mentioned is that Wisconsin structurally is an arch, meaning the rocks have been bowed up. And as we go from central to northern Wisconsin, we get into very hard crystalline rocks that are common at the surface. And these hard crystalline rocks were a high area and they offered a little bit of resistance. But those are the three principal reasons, the friction of the rocks in the high ground in northern Wisconsin, the Lake Michigan lowland, and the Lake Superior lowland. The two of them channeling the ice away, the third factor causing resistance.
But one final and very important question remains. What is going to happen here in the future?
Maybe you can make a buck right now selling off land to the highest bidder and having it developed, but think about your kids or your descendants, and I think about my descendants, and knowing that I was here now and I had an opportunity to do something and save something rather than 20 years down the road say bobolinks or meadowlarks have gone extinct. And to look back and say, I could have done something, or do I want to look back and say, I did do something, I tried to help keep the habitats that are needed for these species to survive.
I think the locals who haven't traveled much take it for granted, and that's understandable, a little sad and regrettable, but quite understandable. If you never leave what you've got, isn't the whole world like this? Because it's so gorgeous, it's so beautiful, the driftless area is so fantastic. And when I fly low over the river and see its beauty and the bluffs on the river, it's hopefully going to be preserved by some good folks and to keep it that way for a long, long time. No, 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 forever.
On Driftless, here in the Driftless, magnetic force in the Paleozoic plateau.
Driftless Zone? What is the Driftless Zone?
One guess.
Driftless Zone?
What is the Driftless Zone? The Driftless area. Maybe I said it wrong.
It sounds like homeless people. I don't know driftless. I don't know drifters.
Yeah, it's like the drifters, except they don't drift. They're driftless.
It's like a zone that homeless people live in and it moves around the country. I honestly have no idea.
And electrolysis, due to the ionic nature of water, caused magnetic repelling forces which kept it away from this area because of the iron content in the earth.